Okay, we're recording. This is
Okay.
Wrong Speed Rapid Chat number 28, and we have Lisa Meyer from Birmingham. Hello.
Hiya.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's been a glorious day, and so that's exciting, isn't it? That we're sort of coming out of winter
Yeah.
into spring.
Yeah, no, well, it's about April the 24th or the 25th, and it's been beautiful weather. I've even got sunburnt over the last few days, but a week ago it was snowing. So, so where are you then?
Where am I based?
Where are you right now? Yeah.
Oh, I'm in my house, in my well, it's our dining room, but it's more of a walkthrough between the lounge and the kitchen, and it's full of my stuff. Because I'm a hoarder or a collector, whichever way you want to see it as being more positive.
Which is perfect for what we're talking about here, of course. So you're in Birmingham, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's get straight into one of the big things you do, and it's Supersonic Festival.
That small thing, yeah.
That small thing that you do pretty much every year, barring pandemics.
We've also had 2 years off as well over the years.
So when did Supersonic start and why?
It started in 2003, and it was very much well, we really didn't know what we were doing in many ways. We'd gone to Sonar Festival a couple of years before, and were really influenced by the fact that it happened at the Macba, which is the contemporary art gallery in Sonar. And so for me, the idea of being able to do a music festival that wasn't in a field without camping was an absolute life changer for me, because I'm not very keen on camping, and I'd spent a lot of my youth sort of volunteering at places like Reading Festival and things like that. Okay. So that I could go for free. And so yeah, this idea of being able to do a festival in an urban environment was quite a different way of seeing things. And in the very first year, 2003, we had bands like Coil, The Bug, which you've got behind you, Pram, LCD Sound System. Wow. Quite an eclectic lineup. And I think at that time,
LCD Sound System.
Yeah, so we basically wrote to him. So because I started Supersonic and Capsule with my friend Jenny. Yeah. She stepped down actually the 2012 program. That was the last year that she did at Capsule. Yeah. And Supersonic. But Jenny and I came together and we did this festival, and we wrote to LCD Sound System, and we were like, come on, you've got to come to Birmingham. It's the home of Black Sabbath. And so they came, and like I think we paid them something like 600 quid or something, and it was like one of their first shows in the UK. Played an amazing set. But I think it was that sort of almost naivety of just like writing to people that we were interested in, and somehow pulling it together. And in that very first year, in 2003, it was kind of like almost the best year, and I wish it had sort of ended there, because I didn't understand the sort of mechanics or the adult responsibility that goes with running a festival. So when Coil were on stage, one of the an over-enthusiastic fan jumped into the pool at the Custard Factory and swam across the pool onto the stage full of electronics, dripping wet. And luckily nothing happened, but a friend of ours who does health and safety for Rover sort of came up to Jen and I afterwards and said, you know, if they had electrocuted themselves or the band, you would go to prison or have a huge fine. And it was at that moment that everything changed, of like, you can't just put on this stuff that's fun. Now we have to be responsible for all of these people. So that's why like that very first one, that sort of naive approach to it all was so brilliant, because we didn't have the sort of burden of responsibility.
Yeah. So 2003, and was that the first gig you put on?
No, so in terms of the first gigs that I put on, I used to live in a student house when I came to Birmingham, and in the student house there were 12 of us that lived there, and we had a massive basement, and so I used to put on lots of hardcore gigs in our basement. So bands like Hard to Swallow and Keto, lots of bands from Belgium, because I live with this amazing fellow who was also on my art course called Martin Savage. I don't know if you know him.
All right. Yeah.
He was from Preston, well, Garstown near Preston, and now he lives in Leeds. But he introduced me to loads of really amazing music, and the two of us would put on gigs in the basement, but then the other guys that we lived with all loved sort of funk and that sort of thing. So then we'd have, you know, like these hardcore bands in the basement, and then upstairs there'd be loads of DJs, and yeah, it was like loads of chaotic fun. So that's where it sort of started from, because I did a fine art degree, but my passion was always music, and somehow this stuff that evolved from the basement turned into what Capsule then became.
Yeah, so
but I think our first gig was in 1999 as Capsule, and that was with Polaris, a band from Leeds.
Yeah.
And that was at the Medicine Bar at the Custard Factory, and we put on an exhibition and a band, because at that time, like, music and arts were very much ghettoized. You either had art in a white wall gallery, and then music was something that existed somewhere else. But I think Jenny and I had a passion for both things, and so we wanted to sort of create events that sort of brought both elements together.
Right. So those basement gigs were just in a normal house in Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful old house. 12. You have to imagine 12 bedrooms. Run down.
Yeah.
And like, we were terrible. We just didn't understand the value of anything. So like, we would have massive bonfires with the antique furniture, using like spray mount to sort of cause almost like these napalm fires with all this old antique furniture. I mean, now I would be very upset with myself to see this wonderful furniture being burnt, but at the time it was just about having fun.
Yeah. So it's got here, so you wrote, this is the 2012 program.
Okay.
And I have this because this was, I'm not sure if this is the first one I went to, but I know we played this one, so I've still got the program. Since the inception of the festival, we've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of incredibly talented artists, and are always amazed at the amount of fascinating undiscovered music there is out there. Our mission, to champion these adventurous sounds, as being the drive behind the continual growth and expansion of the festival. And that seems still to be the case 10 years on and 10 years before, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is so much music out there, and your job as a programmer, curator, whatever you want to call it, is to kind of sift through all of those thousands of bands and somehow choose 30 of them, 20, 30 of them for a weekend, and make sense of how they relate to one another. So, or how you kind of build up an atmosphere over a period of time. So like, starting earlier in the afternoon, and then what do you end with, you know, and how do you take the audience on that journey with you? Because essentially Jenny and I, we've always done this from the perspective of being fans. And so we put ourselves in the place of being a fan, and what is it that we wanted to listen to? Because, you know, when I was younger, I'd go up to places like Leeds and Nottingham and Bradford to the all-dayers there, and, you know, as much as they were fun, well, one, they were very intimidating, I found, as a young woman, because I guess, like, in the early days, there was quite a lot of competitiveness over who was more vegan straight edge than the next person, and who knew more about said American band, etc. And if you weren't an expert, then it sort of felt like, you know, you didn't quite belong. But also, quite often there'd be like 10 of almost the same type of band in one day. And I think that Jenny and I had quite eclectic taste. So yeah, we would go from The Bug to LCD Sound System to Pram, and somehow for us that all made sense under one umbrella. And I think that's what Supersonic has always been about.
Yeah, it's come up a few times. Supersonic's come up a few times on these chats, but other festivals in this country and Tilburg. So either be it Roadburn or Incubate, as was, which I don't think is going anymore. But and then in this country with Supernormal or what other ones? Or maybe even Raw Power. You know, like there's the curatorial role of the people putting it on is important. It drags people in, you know.
Well, I hope so. I think, you know, it doesn't happen randomly. There's, you know, there's a good 12 months of research and talking to other people and going and seeing things. And like I know nothing about music. Like I can't play any instrument, I can't sing, I don't know anything academically about music, so it's very much a sort of intuitive response to what I listen to. And yeah, like I say, being a fan, so if I was watching this, if I was paying that ticket money, what experience do I want? And so it's not just about the music, it's the food, somewhere to sit, you know, the merch area, having a bit of fun as part of it. I think all of those things you've got to sort of take into consideration.
Yeah, I think, well, that just going back to this one, the 2012 one, and the reason I have the bug there was that on the Saturday night, in my memory, it went the bug and then Drunk in Hell in the other room, or the other way around. I can't remember, but they were right next to, you know, and they were both like kind of mind-blowingly brilliant, both bands. But to go from that, which was the bug, which was like what the bug sounds like, and his sound was just going through your rib cage and sort of destroying, but like it was like party music in its own way, to Drunk in Hell. They both fit so well together.
But I think there's both of them have got something such physicality to their music, and there is a heaviness there, but it's expressed in two different types of ways. So that with the bug, it's the heaviness of the bass, but there's still like a lot of really kind of hard sounds in his music as well. But then like having the MCs with him, you can't help but move, even if you are, you know, an ex-hardcore kid who has no rhythm. And you know, we weren't ever very good at dancing, were we? My other half always laughs at that because he comes from going to lots of raves and things, and he reckons maybe we were all a bit flat-footed, which is why we're not very good at dancing. But like even that, you can't help but dance to the bug. And then similarly with Drunk in Hell, there's like it's a swathe of music. The whole crowd starts moving together, and there's that sort of physicality to it. And I think that's what's really exciting about live music, when you're all in that sort of motion together.
Yeah. Oh, that was a double whammy that probably will stick with me. I don't know. Yeah, it was, and it was just it was nice. So it's like that curatorial role where, you know, okay, that will go with that, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Yeah. So and in regarding the art gallery thing that you're talking about, this I keep flyers. So this is a show that you put on for us, and it God damn, what year? 2019 or maybe 2018.
I think that might have been an 18 year.
Yeah. I've said before, and I'll say again, put the years on flyers, because I can't remember what's going on.
That's fair enough.
But this venue, Centrala. I see. I'm not a Birmingham expert, but that felt like an art gallery.
Yeah, so it is an art space.
Yeah.
And then every now and then people like us come in and say, can we take it over and put in a PA and some staging and turn it into a venue? And actually now they're putting on a lot more live music there, because it lends itself now so well to being able to put on music, because there aren't very many independent venues in Birmingham. It's really, problematic. But yeah, Central is a great space for that.
Yeah, and you do the classic double flyer business. So you got the pigs gig on the other side there, Hare and Hounds with cattle.
And both flyers there were designed by David Hand, who's in RS, and also did the that 2012 Supersonic was his first year working with us as a designer, and we've worked with him ever since, because I really love the sort of dynamic of, he can. In the early days, I used to do all the flyers, but actually David is about 1,000,000 times better than I could ever be. But we have great discussions about what the artwork will be like. Yeah,
he's good. I mean, so as a band, we've used him, especially on the last album we did, and and Chris in our band is in Harris with him, and that last Harris record, what's it called? Is it just called Heiress? It's where he's swinging in the tree. That sort of
I
fella
think
that's
so.
dressed up as a ghost is swinging.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That record.
Yeah.
So he's multi-talented.
And they're so good live as well.
Yeah. I saw him in Bristol actually at the Old England. Yeah, really excellent band. So yeah, Dave Hand.
Yeah.
It is nice artwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good design all the way through it. But so the other thing you did in Birmingham, and you can tell me if it's still going or if it's stopped, is the Home of Metal thing.
Yeah.
Tell me about how the hell that came about, because that looked like it blew up out of all proportions.
Yeah, so I started that 13 years ago, around 2007. So we held some, so basically throughout the years, we've been putting on bands from all over the world. So like, for instance, we did a show with Godspeed You Black Emperor at the Q Club, probably around 2005 or thereabout. And they come to the city, they come to Birmingham, and they're like, amazing, what can you take me to see? You know, this is the home of Black Sabbath or Napalm Death. Like, what can we go and see? And we're like, not a lot, I'm afraid. You know, and so we tried out doing commissioning a journalist to put together a walking tour, but it just felt so disappointing, because it was like, you see this venue, this was a thriving venue in the 1960s, is now an empty carpet shop, or this piece of land was a thriving venue in the 1960s, is now a disused car park. So we decided that we needed to do something about it, and in 2007 we held a symposium as part of Home of Metal, and we invited people like Edward Pouncey, who used to be the editor for Sounds magazine, and we had people like Dave Cochran from Head of David, and Carl from Bolt Thrower, Nick Bullen from Napalm Death, but then also had people like Mark Titchener, who's a visual artist who was nominated for a Turner Prize, because I felt at that time that there was sort of this zeitgeist in that metal was infiltrating contemporary art as well. There were artists like Banks Violet, who he cast the sun backline in Salt. I don't know if you ever saw that installation that was at Maureen Paling's gallery. No. But I sort of felt like there was, that the contemporary art world, even on the fringes, there were artists that were starting to make reference to metal, and that it felt like an important thing. And to me, it's been like this no-brainer, because I'm not actually from Birmingham originally. I grew up in London, so I came to Birmingham for university in about 1994. And maybe it's taken an outsider to sort of say, look, this is something we're celebrating. Yeah. So after that symposium, we got a piece in the New Statesman which talked about the importance of metal and how, in terms of export, it was bigger than hip hop, and yet the West Midlands had done nothing to celebrate it. And so that gave us more than just Jenny and I being these, two young women saying, oh, it's really important, we should do something. Like, we had a piece in the New Statesman. And so from that, we got a little bit of funding and realised that there weren't any existing collections. So what we did is we held like a series of open days, which were almost like Antiques Roadshow, but for metal fans, at various galleries around the region. And we invited people to bring along their ephemera and their and we recorded memories and etc., because we needed to start to piece together what an exhibition, what a collection would look like, and what the story would be. And we got such an amazing response with those first open days. So we had people like Sue Halford, who's Rob Halford's sister, because she still lives in Walsall. Yeah. And she came to one of the open days with like a number of his leather costumes.
We'll just hold it up just because I've got it here.
Fantastic.
Yeah. £2 from the local charity shop.
Fantastic. Bargain.
Yeah.
Sue came along with costumes, and then I was a good friend of Nick Bullen, who was the originator of Napalm Death. So you look at those costumes, and the interesting thing about Walsall is it's got a leather museum there. So there was a nice connection between his costumes and the leather museum in Walsall. And then Nick Bullen and Justin Broderick, we were friends with, and when we had bands like Dalek come and play and stay at our house, like we'd sort of bring out Nick and Justin, and they'd sort of tell these amazing stories, when they were 12, 13 years old, and in a band and writing fanzines and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, this is something that really has to be captured in some way.
Oh my God, yeah. Like how important were, like, Sabbath and Priest are important, but the sort of, like, how important is, like, that band?
Exactly. And
like worldwide importance.
but also I think like quite conceptual, you like, you know, in terms of Nick's approach of, you know, you suffer and that you can't hear the lyrics. And the whole point of that is that you then go and read the, he would make an insert which had more information about the lyrics and the politics that he was interested in. And so it forced you as to not sort of just passively consume their work, but to kind of get a bit more involved with it. And yeah, I just, all of that was so interesting. So from 2007 till 2011, we were sort of gathering stories and artifacts, and we held the first sort of major exhibition in 2011, and that was kind of looking at the ingredients of why this music had come from the Midlands. And so it was about Sabbath and Judas Priest, Godflesh and Napalm Death. And that was a huge exhibition that happened at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery. And then we had a number of contemporary art exhibitions at places like Wolverhampton Art Gallery and New Art Gallery Walsall. So we did a solo show of Mark Titchener, and then an exhibition at Wolverhampton Art Gallery of contemporary artists that were making reference to metal motifs in their work. And then we had the first ever heavy metal academic conference as well, for example. Ooh. And that was amazingly successful. And we had something like 200,000 visitors come to visit all of that season of work. And so afterwards we were like, great, we've really achieved something here. We got loads of amazing press, people traveled from all over the world, like what's next? And I had a meeting with someone at the council, and they were like, look, it has been the most successful cultural project of the region, but I'm afraid it's a little bit too niche. I mean, aside from the Pope's visit and Home of Metal, I mean, these have been the most popular and successful projects, but no, we can't really take it forward because it's too niche. To which I replied, well, no offense, but so's the Pope, you know.
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
Yeah. And so I got really disheartened by it because it had been such a lot of work that I sort of put the project on hold for a couple of years. And then in 2017, when I found out that Sabbath were doing their last ever tour, and also some of the feedback that we'd had was that the perception from outside of this world was that it was just the fans, it was only relevant to white men in their 60s, and it wasn't going to be of interest to anyone else. So I always had this idea of like photographing the fan base to show how diverse the fan base was, and that it was intergenerational, and it was male, female, you know, all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. And so when Sabbath said that they were doing their last ever tour, we got in touch with Sharon and asked if we could have permission to go and photograph fans at all of the last dates. And so we applied for some funding and trained a group of amazing volunteers, and we basically went around the country and set up these sort of pop-up photo booths almost, or studios, and captured fans. And then we also sort of sent off sort of pilot I guess almost instructions so that we could do them in Lebanon and Tokyo and Spain and like all over the world. And in the end, we got over 3,500 photographs and oral histories of fans, just to sort of demonstrate, almost like a butterfly collection, that these are all individuals, but the thing that they have in common is their love and their passion for Sabbath.
Yeah.
And when you place them next to each other, you can kind of examine the differences between them, but also something that unites them all.
Yeah.
And so from that, applied for more funding and sort of looked at sponsorship, etc., and then sort of worked towards an exhibition which was Black Sabbath 50 years, and also sort of working with each of Black Sabbath as well and their managers, which, you know, unlike a band like the Rolling Stones, there isn't an existing archive of Sabbath. Right. Like not even the record labels have that. So it took 4 years to kind of piece together what the narrative would be.
Because I was under the impression that Ozzy Osbourne didn't have shoes for the first 2 years of Black Sabbath, so they weren't going to have any memorabilia left over, were they?
That's the thing, and I think perhaps they never thought that they were going to be big. They're such humble fellas. I guess they didn't think of themselves as kind of being these icons. And so why would you keep all of this stuff? You just moved on to, you know, the next thing. So yeah, piecing together a narrative and all of the collection was an immense piece of work. But it was incredible. It meant that I went and did interviews with Geezer and with Bill and Tony. And Tony, you know, they've all been incredibly supportive, and Sharon was really helpful as well. So, but you know, they exist as 4 separate entities, so it's kind of navigating that relationship as well, which was, you know, I learned a lot over those 4 years. But I also wanted to show the relationship to the fans, because without the fans there would be no Sabbath, because they were pretty much ignored by the UK press in their early days. There was just like awful things written about them. And so really without the fan base, they wouldn't have got to where they are now. So the exhibition was about their story, but also that relationship and what it meant to be a fan in parallel.
It's really interesting, isn't it? There's an argument for longevity for bands that aren't completely supported by the press early on as well. I think about, I talked about recently about the Cardiacs, having some sort of feeling where the press don't like them, yet somehow they just keep getting bigger, just slowly. And also the thing about like fan shot footage and whatever else that you're talking about with the photos and stuff, they're the best bits of thing. There's do you have, or have you ever seen the Beastie Boys live video where it's fan shot, and they gave out like 100 cameras or something to people in the crowd, and it turns out to be the best footage because it's just sort of right there. It's
I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I used to, like on a Tuesday, Enemy and Melody Maker used to come out, and we'd always get that, and it would have, you know, reviews of gigs, and I'd always want to see if we were in the crowd shot, you know. I wasn't that interested in a way of the band on stage, but wanted to see the crowd, because in a way the band on stage could be anywhere, but for it to be the one that you were at, you wanted to see some of the people that were part of that gig.
Exactly. You're part of the event. And just I'm going to briefly, 10 seconds, just quickly talk about Match of the Day.
Okay.
The football program. And I don't really watch it anymore because I don't really follow the Premier League that much, but I used to only like it when they cut to the fans celebrating rather than the players.
Yeah.
So goal goes in, I don't want to see the people on the pitch jumping around. I want to see the crowd going mental. Yeah. And I think it's the same, like it's the same with like a live band photo. I really like it when the crowd is in the shot. If the camerawoman, whoever, is just a bit back a bit and gets everyone in.
Absolutely.
And like, yeah. And so with festivals like this, one of the things I really like is the fact that you feel part of it as a fan. Like there's, you know, the bit in the middle where there's like Colin Edgewell selling his records and whatever else. It's quite nice, isn't it, to be able to like move around and be a big unit.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, this type of music, it is quite niche, and there might only be 10 people in Leicester and 40 in Nottingham and 30 in Birmingham, and that's the reality. And I think really early on I realised, like, just because the band's on the front cover of The Wire, it really doesn't mean that many people have heard of that artist still. And so when you can get those 20 people from Nottingham and 10 from Leicester and 4 up from Glasgow, suddenly you have this sort of national and global scene, and it's like this big family coming together. But once a year, or maybe a couple of times a year, now that there are more festivals, you all get to sort of see each other.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's done in such a way that even if you're new to that, you can become part of that family, and it's welcoming.
Yeah, like at the last Supersonic, was it maybe the last one that happened? It was 2019, right?
Yeah.
So at that, I bumped into 2 or 3 of the people from the Glasgow band Snowblood who had travelled down for the festival,
Right.
I hadn't seen them. I would never have seen them under normal circumstances, but they were there, and it was just really nice to sort of just say hello for 10 minutes and go, holy crap, you're here, that's amazing, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the bit that always brings me joy, is, you know, that despite all the sort of hard work and the stressing behind the scenes, that then when it does actually happen, it's like that sort of alchemy almost, in that it feels magical that there are all these people that have somehow bought into your vision and sort of come with you on this journey.
Where's the furthest, do you know the furthest person that's travelled to Supersonic?
Oh, we've had people from the States and Japan, and from Israel, like all over, like especially in the earlier days, people really used to. I guess there was less like Supersonic then. There's more on offer these days, isn't there? Sort of in Europe, mainland Europe, etc. But yeah, we had people come from all over the world, and like 80% of our audience come from outside of the region. So people do really travel from all over the place.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, it's marvellous. I'm looking forward to it happening again. And when is it happening again?
So we've made the hard decision not to do it this year, and there are a number of reasons really. And the main reason, which is probably the most frustrating, is that as responsible adults, we need to have events insurance.
You're not letting people swim to a stage anymore.
Exactly. That's what I mean about it being no fun anymore. You know, now if someone damages themselves, you know, that is on my shoulders. That really does take a little bit of the joy out of things. But anyway, we can't get events insurance that will cover anything that is cancelled due to COVID. So if the roadmap changed last minute, as it did at Christmas, you know, Boris was all excited and telling everyone to go and visit their families and to go shopping and go out eating, and then turned around the following week and said, oh no, actually this is really pretty dangerous, stay at home. If that happened now and that the roadmap changed in some way, plus they haven't really been very clear about when they say things are going to open up in June, does that mean back to full capacity? You know, it's still quite unclear. So we felt it was too much risk because we can't get it covered with our insurance, and so rather we're going to look to 22 as our sort of comeback year and continue with the work that we've been doing online for the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. I know Roadburn just did an online one, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
I watched it at home and it was fine, you know, and hopefully
we did Supersonic last summer, and that felt the right thing to do at that moment, but I don't think that we do that this year, because I think there's a little bit of digital fatigue now. And I think that people come the summer will want to be out in the world a little bit more. I know that, you know, I've been shielding for the last year, but come the summer, if I have the opportunity to be sort of in the park or by the seaside, I'll be doing that rather than necessarily sitting, you know, dedicating 3 days to being in front of a computer.
Absolutely fair enough. I agree. Okay, but what we're actually here to do.
Yeah, we haven't talked about any records yet.
We want to talk about records, and also I have some here that I know that we've talked about. I'm quite keen to talk about a couple of them, but hopefully we'll cross that bridge. So hit me with a record from your favourite record shop.
Okay, well, I thought it might be worth starting with the fact that so it was a really great question to get, and I was thinking, well, actually I used to have still have a bit of a love-hate relationship to record shops, because I don't know about you, but there have certainly been some throughout my years that you go into and they have really grumpy salespeople who sort of test your knowledge. You know, there's one in Birmingham in particular that, you know, I'd want to go in and buy records and they'd be like, so Lisa, do you know this jazz artist? And they'd point to some really obscure jazz artist, and I'd be like, I don't, but I'd quite like to buy a record from you. And so they, you know, they were quite intimidating places, I think. And I grew up in London, and like going to somewhere like Rough Trade, where you had to walk down those like rickety stairs through Slam City skates, was terrifying.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
So I think I've always had quite a strange relationship with record shops. But in the very early days when I was a teen, I had absolutely no money but loved music. And so my friends and I used to get lots of people to tape us music. And then we would go into our price record shop and we would steal not the records, not the tapes, but just the tape covers, so that we would have the original tape. So here I've got one of Jane's Addiction. You can see lovely, you know, a proper cover.
Yeah, looks really good.
Looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But actually, there's the set, like the list of the songs, and that's the tape. And then I've got another one here, The Cure. Again, you know, it looks like the real deal, doesn't it?
It's brilliant.
But in actual fact, again, it's just someone's recorded it for me.
I tell you what, I love that you still got those.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm a bit of a hoarder, bit of a collector, so.
And that's your story right there. It's brilliant.
Exactly. But then when I moved to Birmingham, the way that I got to meet people, because although there were lots of great people on my fine art course, like none of them were into the music that I was into, bar one person, Martin Savage. And so the way I met people in Birmingham was through a record shop. So I went to the Plastic Factory, which was next door to Ideal, which was the skate shop. And through them, I got, you know, I made friends, like-minded friends. And what was also great about going into Plastic Factory, the person that used to work there was a guy called Spencer Hickman, and he now runs Death Waltz Records, and he set up Rough Trade East. He was brought in to kind of set up their new shop, Rough Trade East, and then went off to do Death Waltz Records. But way before that, he used to work at Plastic Factory. And when I used to go in there, he would I'd buy a 12-inch and then he'd slip in a 7-inch for free. So that was always good. And I was trying to find it, but have I got one here? Hang on. Oh yeah, so, you know, like bands like Karate and Cherry Coke, like that was one of my favourite songs, Cherry Coke. But, you know, I'd go into the shop and then amazingly he would have like slipped an extra 7-inch in and I'd get some free records, which was always great. And it also meant meeting sort of like-minded people, which was good. And then Nathan, who then ran Milk and Meal record shop, he started off as like an intern, work experience person at Plastic Factory. And then when he went on to work at, I think he was at Tempest Records, he was absolutely brilliant because I'd go in and he knew the sort of music that I was into, and so he would recommend things, because I think it is a bit of a minefield, and like great record shops are the ones where they sort of create a relationship with you, and so they can recommend records that you might like. And so I've had some amazing ones from him over the years, but this is like one of the ones that I really was spot on. So it's covers of Sabbath. Oh. But it's like by Matt Moss and Ruins and Grails, Fortet, Paul Newman.
Temporary Residence, is that the label there?
Yeah.
Try and look at the logo and the sticker. Yeah.
Yeah. And those would be, you know, Nathan would just recommend those sorts of things. Or like this is another one that Nathan recommended to me, and I do love a novelty record, but this one's called Hate Beak, and it's death metal by a parrot.
Yeah.
So,
and a good sleeve as well.
Exactly. I don't know who it's trying to cover. So yeah, I guess like when they're good, they're fantastic, aren't they? Record shops, but there's no doubt that they can be really intimidating places as well.
I agree. I spoke with a previous person about Rough Trade in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
For me, even though I attempted to try skateboarding, but I couldn't do it. But you know, I like tried or whatever. The combination of the coolness of Slam City and the coolness of Rough Trade, I'd stand outside for a minute going, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure I can handle this.
Or like there'd be like a band playing down there, and so then you'd have to navigate your way through like people dancing and like watching something live, and you didn't quite know what to do with yourself, like if you're a bit self-conscious, and also in such a small one they sort of know what you're looking at, and if you weren't an expert, and I think when you're 18, when you're 17, you're not an expert, you can't possibly be, and like I said, I never had the money in those days to I loved music and I went to loads of gigs, but I didn't have the money to buy stuff. And so, thankfully over the years, I've just had loads of great friends that made me mixtapes. And I think that's how I found so much music. So these are some of the ones from my youth. Like there's one with Prong and Slayer. This one's got like Burn and Helmet and Gorilla Biscuits and Fugazi on. This has got some less good hardcore, like
less good hardcore, everyone's favourite.
Worlds Collide, Damnation AD, etc. But yeah, I found another one as well. Like I'll call this one dodgy hardcore, like Cro-Mags, for example, because they turned out to be quite homophobic, didn't they?
I'm conflicted because I absolutely love that Age of Coil album. So
yeah, that one's got Cro-Mags, Judge, Biohazard, Sick of It All, etc. But yeah, I suppose I didn't buy that much other than things like, I tell you what I have got here, which I was thinking. So this Lunatics album, for example, there were so few women on the scene as well when I was younger. So nice. To go to a gig and see them play, and for them to be rowdy and cheeky and like so confident, that was exciting for me as a young woman to see other women on stage. I definitely wasn't the sort of girl in those days that stood at the front or was super confident at gigs. Like that took a really long time, and so when I see young women now at our gigs, I feel so happy that they're able to be there in their own right, and that they are taking up space at the front and they are making the music. I think that's really exciting, because it was so male dominated when I was growing up. I'd always have a couple of good female friends that were into the music like I was, but we were quite a rare breed at that time, I think.
No, yeah, you're right. It's positive. I think who was it who played this? Youth Man.
Oh yeah.
Are they still going, that band?
So they're not, but we're going to put out Kayla from Youth Man. She's got another project called Blue Ruth, and instead of doing the festival this year, we're going to put out a few releases, and Kayla's will be the first one as Blue Ruth as an EP, as a tape.
Yeah, I enjoyed them. I thought they were good. So yeah, it was good. Actually, seeing as you've just mentioned that, one of the records I have here is a Supersonic release. So you have released a few things in the past. I don't know when you started or stopped. This is Cap 008.
Okay.
And it's the Iron Lung live album, because I'm a massive...
Atomic Geniuses or Iron Lung?
I love Iron Lung. So to have the live album of them. So you released a series of... You can explain it. Why am I explaining? You explaining what happened here.
I've got another one here as well.
Yeah.
So I've got the Oxbow Duo.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I actually, on that note, I just thought I'd show the Oxbow album here, because I don't think enough people talk about this record, the Thin Black Duke album from a few years ago.
They're a fantastic band, and I've got a great story to tell you about Oxbow, and we'll hold that one.
Excellent. Yeah, tell us about these then.
This one was in 2007, I think. So we did Oxbow, we did Iron Lung, we did Tweetbird.
Harvey Milk?
Oh, and Harvey Milk. So we only did 4, and then we did Einstellung, who are a band from Birmingham as well. But basically at the time, well, you used to work for them, I think, didn't you? Southern Records. So Alison from Southern Records.
Talk about it too much. But yeah.
Was a good friend of ours, and she did a deal with us, a P&D deal, where they would pay for the production and distribution of our records. And then sadly, when Alison had to give up Southern Records, we stopped doing the live releases. But we're thinking about maybe starting them again in the future.
Yeah.
But this Oxbow one is one of my favourites because it was Nico and Eugene, and then with Justin Broderick and Dave Cochran from Heather David, and then also Stephen O'Malley. So like quite a unique collaboration, and so to capture that was great. And then Iron Lung, I mean, the banter in between songs is just incredible, just so funny.
Yeah. Can you see the date there? July 25th, 2009.
And then similarly with Harvey Milk, it was such a big deal to get them to come over because they didn't even have passports. So to get them to come to Supersonic was like such an enormous effort on both their behalf and ours, that we needed to market in some way. So hence putting out that record as well.
Yeah. I think I love Iron Lung. I think I saw them around this time in Bristol. They played in an old pizza place that had closed down opposite on Gloucester Road or whatever. And yeah, it was like you say, the in-between song stuff is definitely part of the charm of that band.
Oh, completely, because he'll say things like, can one of the volunteers come up and give me a massage, and it's so tongue-in-cheek, but then the music is kind of quite aggressive and full on. So yeah, to have that sort of juxtaposition of a comic genius and then just that
drummer's a funny guy. And he can play like hell as well.
Well, that's always a bonus, to be funny and be good.
Yes, yeah, that's me right there. So the next on my list is a record with memories.
Okay. So I guess I've got a couple, if that's all right. Hard to. So I thought this one is quite an unusual one. So my friend Brummy Si, who, although he's called Brummy Si, like when I met him, it was in London, and then he lived in Nottingham. Jenny and I shared a house with him in Birmingham for about 6 months, but then he's moved to London. So the fact that he's called Brummy Si and isn't really, he's from Birmingham originally. He was never in Birmingham for that long. But when he lived in Nottingham, he used to live with Neil from Bob Tilton. Okay. And he put this 7-inch together, but it's done in I don't know if you can see, it's in an Indian sweet box.
Oh. I couldn't work it out. Okay, yeah.
So Ambala was, it's just an Indian sweet shop in Nottingham, but he must have got like a load of the boxes and he used that as a 7-inch. I just love the ingeniousness of that. And then I could never really tell because, when a record's got a white label.
It's got nothing written on it. Brilliant.
I couldn't really tell what I was listening to, but that made me love it even more.
And who is it?
I didn't know if it was the right speed, who was on it. It's got a random card in of the prisoner.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And you don't know who it is, or?
Yeah, it's got this bit. So it's got a band called Ambala.
Okay.
Useful Idiot. Coil. Cradle. So Coil were from Scotland.
Right.
Cradle were from Birmingham. Honey, I can't remember. Oh, Honey, I think they might have been from Belgium. Yeah. So, but I never knew which was which on the actual record. You can see it's been much loved.
Yeah.
And I really love records that sort of have bits of treasures inside them. So, like the Godspeed record has got the penny.
Yeah.
Inside it. And then Juna 44 have got those stamps.
Oh, yeah.
A set of stamps in them. I love it when you get surprises in a record.
More stuff for you to hoard.
Yeah, and also because I guess I've intuitively bought records based on covers, which don't they say never judge a book by a cover? But yeah, I think you can with a record, can't you? You can buy
at least you know you're getting a good cover.
Yeah. So that's one of them. That was a good memory. And then another one, I suppose, going back to talking about times in my basement. So this one's Hard to Swallow and Underclass, and Hard to Swallow played in my basement, and that was just like one of the most fun shows ever.
Yeah, that is incredible.
And then Tito They were a band from Leeds. They also played in the basement, and Rob Kiso, who was the singer, we had like a sewage pipe in the basement, and he was like holding onto the sewage pipe singing. And, you know, I was like, oh God, are we all going to get covered in shit? But it didn't happen, thankfully. But we did have massive pylons, and it was just great fun. And then I think the wonderful thing about that is, like, 20 plus years later, like, Rob is one of our drivers for Supersonic, and fetches loads of the bands from the airport, etc. And so to still have a relationship with some of these people that I met in my early 20s or sort of late teens is magic, you know, like friends for life, essentially. Wonderful people. So,
I had a good chat with him. I had a good chat with him at the last Supersonic. I remember he was waiting to go and pick up or drop off Neurosis or something was going on. He had to go to pick them up and drop them off and whatever.
Yeah, their van broke down. Their massive tour bus broke down, and because of the type of tour bus that it was, they had to wait 24 hours or something crazy like that for a replacement to come. So then we had to they had to sleep in the venue, because they were meant to be sleeping on the bus, so we never got them a hotel room. They didn't want one because they were going to be traveling through the night. Right. So instead we put them up in the venue, like locked them into the venue, left them some beer, etc., and food and whatnot, and then they played, is it Dungeons and Dragons?
There is that game, I don't know.
Yeah, they played that until the early hours, apparently, until the bus was fixed. It was them and Yob until the early hours playing Dungeons and Dragons, because our security person that stayed in the venue was just howling with laughter because of them all just having so much fun playing Dungeons and Dragons.
I don't understand Dungeons and Dragons. My son plays it. So, you know, he might even be playing it now, like online, but he has friends around every Friday under normal circumstances, and there's like 5 or 6 of them in the kitchen, and they'll play it for 6 or 7 hours, and I haven't the foggiest what is going on. It's like they're making it up as they go along.
I think it's like what's it called, TikTok, for instance. I think there are some things that are like, there's too much going on anyway to take on something else to be obsessed by. Like, you've got to draw the line, don't you? So I think it's okay not to follow up on that. Yeah. And then Paul Robb, one of the years at Supersonic, at the hotel that we put a lot of the artists up at, just outside, there was a gang fight, and one of the guys was killed in a machete fight, and Paul Robb had gone back for a quiet pint and to watch the cricket, because he'd been driving people all day. And then I got a phone call to say, Lisa, I've been locked, you know, I've been locked into the hotel because there's a police have cordoned off the area, and I'm trapped here now because I've just witnessed a murder. And it was like, oh, Sunday Supersonic, don't worry, Rob, I'll be with you in 10 minutes. You know, another thing to take in my stride.
Just a murder.
Well, that's it. It's like, you know, there have been a lot of things that have happened at Supersonic over the years. So one year we had, it was in 2007, we call it the year of the bomb. And that's when it was the London bombings.
Yeah, 7/7, right?
Yeah. And the weekend after that was Supersonic, and everything was going brilliantly. And then about halfway through the evening, so Battles had played, Dalek had played, all fantastic, everything going hunky-dory. Stephen O'Malley was just about to take to the stage to do a special collaboration with Mersbow. And then actually Stuart from Mogwai was there to DJ, and his mum had phoned him up from Glasgow to say, Birmingham's on the news, you know, there's been a big, the whole city's being evacuated, there's a big bomb scare. And he was like, don't be silly, mum, everything's fine here. Because we were in the custard factory in Digbeth, and just, you know, it's just outside of the city. And he came to tell me, and I was like, look around, Stuart, it's absolutely fine, what are you talking about? And literally about half an hour later, the news must have reached the then security guards, who I might add we don't work with anymore. But they found out, and they basically abandoned us. Oh. And so Jenny and I, with the help of our friend Tony Sylvester, I don't know if you know Tony.
I know the name. No, yeah, I'm aware.
So he now sings in Turbo Negro, and he used to be in the band Fabric. Anyway, he used to be our PR person, and he's got quite a presence, quite a loud voice. And we were like, Tony, there's a big bomb evacuation happening in the city and we're going to have to clear the site, but there's no security left here. Can you help us? But he'd just taken some ketamine. And so we were trying to get everyone out, and we were like, but we didn't know this at the time. He was like, move away from the venue. Like, trying really, like, in not a very good way to get everyone out. And then Urban Audio, who are the people that do all of our PA, they were absolutely amazing, and they like locked everything down for us, made sure that all the band's kit was secure, and then like friends of ours came through the barriers because the whole city had been cordoned off, came through, like drove their little minis through the barriers and took people like Mersbow and Stephen O'Malley back to their houses and put them up, because we couldn't get anyone back to hotels either. So it was like a really amazing joint effort in like the space of about an hour to get everybody sorted. So that was quite a was by fire.
It's the first, and the thing that I was reading earlier, the first paragraph, from bomb scares to sweaty men in speedos.
Yeah, that's monotonics. Yeah, we have had to. Yeah, there's always something going on behind the scenes. Like it's probably why I always look quite stressed and not that friendly at a festival. It's because I've got that sort of spinning around in my head, like, go and save Rob from a machete attack up the road, or
Exactly. So you need to be the calm duck on the top of the water.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's the thing with the festival, is like everyone else is having a great time and they're all getting really smashed, and they've been up for 3 nights solidly, and they're like, I've worked really hard to put this program together, and then I'm most of the time in the control room sort of making sure that things are running smoothly and not getting to do that with like a complete lack of sleep. But somehow I still want to do it year after year. There's something still quite addictive about it.
There must be adrenaline, right, to make sure it all works well. And
definitely, and it's the team. I really value the team and the people that are involved in making it happen.
And you've got to pay the bands, so you need to turn up. And I did this just as an aside. We played the Liverpool Psych Fest.
Oh yeah.
I don't know when, like 2015 or one of those years, I don't know. And I went up to like get paid, so I went to the room that you had to do this, and they're like, "Oh, okay, you've come to get paid." I was like, "Yeah." And they go, "What band are you?" I said, "Spiritualized." She handed me the Spiritualized money in an envelope, and it was like sort of this thick, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I can't pull this one off. Sorry, I'm not."
Far too honest.
I couldn't do it. I wish I had done it. It would have been funnier, but I didn't have the
Well,
ball.
that's it. You do have to have a little bit of being professional with this stuff, and I think it can seem really boring to be the sober one when all of this stuff's happening. But someone, like you say, my team, we have to make sure that people are safe and that they are getting paid. That is our responsibility. And I'm often jealous when I go to other festivals and people are like walking around with their pints and they're the organisers, and I'm like, how's this able to happen? Why have I not got that right yet?
No, well, I don't know. Okay, hit me with a bargain find.
So I thought that's quite difficult. Hang on, what did I don't really buy records based on their value particularly, so that was quite a hard one. But then when I was looking through things, I did find this War record for 99p in my collection. I thought, well, that's a bargain, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, they're an amazing band, and 99p is not bad at all. I remember going to see them at Camden Palace and getting absolutely covered in blood. And just thinking it was like one of the best things I'd ever seen, just so funny. And then having to get on the tube back to Finchley,
where you live.
Where I grew up. And it was fine when I got on the train in Camden because there were loads of other people covered in blood. But by the time I got to Finchley,
the last
yeah, exactly. I was like this freakish young teen with like lots of blood all over me. And I just love like all their costumes and all the humour that went along before. So that would be my bargain one then.
I'm not a value nerd. for records at all. I don't care. So I've said before, you buy a record for £1 or whatever, if you get more than your value for money from it just from listening, then that becomes the bargain, right?
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because I was thinking that my relationship to music and records has changed so much over the years, because I didn't have very much money when I was younger. When I did buy a record, I'd obsessively listen to it over and over again, and there'd be like a couple of tracks that would stand out, and yeah, I'd listen over and over again. I thought oh no, I don't have it. Did I bring it with my not here? No. Don't worry. Anyway, yeah, I'd be like really obsessed by a record. Oh, actually, hang on. Maybe. Here we go. So like that would have been a free one. Yes. But that's like Motorhead, Stupid's Creator, and Celtic Frost.
Wow, that's killer combination.
Yeah. But I'd listen, like, because I didn't have very much music, I'd listen to it over and over and over again, and I'd be obsessed by it. Whereas I think now, well, maybe I don't have as much time, or maybe there's too much to listen to. I mean, I listen to quite a lot on my computer while I'm working or as part of my research, but sort of sitting down and listening to something over and over again, it just doesn't happen so much anymore. I mean, I still, if someone sends me something and I'm listening online to do some research, there's still like often like a track that stands out and it sort of hooks me in that way. Yeah. But it's just not the same as when I was a youngster, and when you have less, it means that much more to you.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly the same. I think for everyone's saying roughly the same sort of thing.
Right.
Like you had a certain amount of money, it was your paper round money or whatever. Yeah. And so you'd spend your £5 on this one record that would have to last you the month, and you'd listen to it 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've got to know it so well.
And
that's why it sort of becomes part of your history then.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, well, I think everyone's got a little pile of records like that they'll never get rid of, that are just, it's their story of their life right there. Really important. Okay, this next one is record bought on tour.
Okay.
You can play it how you want to play it.
Okay, well, I haven't, obviously I don't go on tour per se, but I used to go to South by Southwest quite a lot, or I've been to a lot of other music festivals internationally. And the great thing about South by Southwest, certainly in the early days, I mean now, well, I haven't been for about 10 years now, but the reason we stopped going was because it became a bit like an enemy stag do, like hideous sort of like young British bands that thought that they'd made it, and so they were getting absolutely smashed at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, sort of thinking it was all like music biz, and there's nothing I hate more than all of that stuff. But in the early days, you could just wander in from one showcase to another and then just discover amazing bands. But one of the records I bought was this one called White Mice, and it's just hilarious. Like the tracks are things like Jesus Saves Us, They Tried to Poison Me, What Vice, The Maze, Mousetrap, and then I don't know if you can.
It looks gnarly.
And then it's a bit of a sort of piss take of black metal, because like all the names of the musicians.
Yeah.
Things like You Want a Mouse, etc. So it was just great going to label showcases, not really knowing what you were going to find there. But over the years, I came across bands like for example.
Well, they've played Supersonic, right?
Yeah, so I think we might have been the first people to bring them over to the UK.
Right.
And like Harvey Milk, it was like quite an effort to get them to come to play at Supersonic. But yes, we saw them with Circle at this amazing showcase, and we had quite a few tequilas at that point, and we were playing at about 2 a.m, and it was just one of the best gigs I've ever been to, because they're so sort of motoric. Circle sort of built and built and built, and then that followed by On, which again sort of builds and builds, and that sort of audience all moving together. It's just incredible. So yeah, saw bands like Zombie for the first time, South by Southwest, which is Joe Mascis' band. Got to see Harvey Milk, and then there'd be things like the Chunklet Showcase, which would be like Torch and Part Chimp. And the other amazing thing about South by Southwest, especially the sort of fringe showcases, there's like no health and safety whatsoever, which is like such in such contrast as I was talking about with Supersonic, where we do have to be really, on top of everything.
Yeah.
But like I went to see one with Part Chimp and Torch, and on one side of the road, Part Chimp were playing just with some amps on the side of the road, and then when they finished, everyone would cross over and then go and see Torch. And this is how the showcase worked all afternoon, because I think it was just outside a record shop.
Right.
And then we also saw Torch play in like an ex-fire station, but it was really, really tiny one. And it was like, when you see those shows as a teen, where everyone's sort of climbing up on the speakers and on the stacks and just super sweaty, like a sauna. But yeah, the atmosphere was incredible. So yeah, I've been able to see some fantastic gigs like that.
I've never been to South by Southwest, but yeah, it sounds.
I mean, now it would be, I couldn't think of anything worse. Like our last thing that we did there, we got to do an In Conversation with Lemmy from Motorhead to launch Home of Metal in the States, and that was pretty damn terrifying, because obviously you're not allowed to smoke at venues in America, but Lemmy was like smoking away, didn't give a shit, had his bottle of Jack D. There were no rules for him. And like we took Johnny Doom to do the interview, and like Johnny asked him questions like, what's the worst hangover you've ever had? And Lemmy just answered, well, you have to stop drinking to have a hangover. Just really super dry.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable. Like one of the most awkward. I mean, it was funny as an audience member, but yeah, it was incredibly awkward as well.
Actually, the last time I saw Motorhead was with Black Sabbath.
Okay.
They played the Hyde Park gig.
Oh yeah.
So it was Black Sabbath, Soundgarden, Motorhead, Faith No More.
Yeah.
And there was another stage with a bunch of stuff on as well. And we bought our tickets for £2.50. There was this weird scam that went round. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, we got ones similarly for £2.50, but the sound was terrible, wasn't it? I mean, it was like the biggest letdown of a gig. Because it's like, look at that lineup, it's incredible. But yeah, the sound was awful.
I'd like to bring up something that we've talked about previously, and it's it's your dream what's the collaboration you'd like to bring to Supersonic. I don't know if you'll admit what this is in a second, but also I sort of said to you that my favourite band of that day was Faith No More. Yeah. And I liked all the bands, but I thought Faith No More were just so good. It was almost like they were in the 90s or whatever. So talk to me about Faith No More, talk to me about how you got into Black Sabbath, and talk to me about your dream collaboration for the Supersonic.
It probably sounds, you're sort of building it up and people will probably think, oh yeah, Mike Patton is such an experimental artist. Yeah, I can see where this is going. But no, you'll be surprised. So actually, my mum and dad were really into like Jethro Tull and Black Sabbath and Tom Waits and artists like that. But it was my mum and dad's music, so I pretty much dismissed it, even though I guess in the background it was always there growing up, because there was always music on in our house. Or my dad, when we went on trips in the car, there'd be Heavy Horses really loudly, and we'd all sing our hearts out. But I came to Black Sabbath almost by accident, in terms of on my own terms, in that I got this tape, which is Faith No More live at Brixton Academy, and they did a cover of War Pigs, and I had no idea that was Black Sabbath, but that song just really stuck out for me. And when we were just talking about being listening over and over again, like I'd play it like obsessively, and then did a bit, then found out that it was actually Black Sabbath. And so it was through Faith No More that I got into sort of Sabbath in my own right, as opposed to what my parents were listening to. But yeah, I have a lot to thank them for. But my dream collaboration, of course, would be Mike Patton with Lionel Richie doing a cover of Easy Like Sunday Morning. And like, I mean, I just can't imagine anything better. The two of them on stage.
I agree, because when they did, Faith No More played that at that Black Sabbath thing, right? And there's all these like metal mothers there, you know, with their battle jackets on and the whole 9 yards. But when they did that song, the whole crowd sang. It was beautiful.
But there's nothing better than a kind of reach and grab, dry your eyes kind of song, is there? Yeah. And I think there's something about Lionel Richie. I just love him. I just love his music. It's just, I can just sing my little heart out to him. And he just seems like such a nice man as well. I reckon you'd have a nice chat with him before he went on stage. I don't think he'd be too demanding. I think Mike would probably be maybe a bit more, need more of a rider than Lionel. But I think, you know, together they'd be amazing.
You get your man Rob Kaito would go and pick him up in his Ford Transit.
I'd hope so. And I know we just did an interview with Mike Patton and Andrew Clark, who's a cook, a chef.
Oh, I watched.
Yeah, and Mike was talking about how he loves curries and, you know, from all over the world, etc. So I reckon we could take Lionel and Mike out then to Lady Pool Road, and take them for a nice curry afterwards, and we'd have a good chat. So yeah, I think it would be perfect.
Because I tell you why.
Just blow the entire budget on the two of them.
It's my excuse, just because I don't really know anyone that, you know, is that interested, but this is my copy of the real thing. And I've told this story many times, but this is when I bunked my English GCSE exam to go and get it signed. They signed the records the day after they played at Tower Records. I was 16. And yeah, and my the school phoned up and said, why is Joe not in his exam? My dad was like, he didn't realise I wasn't in the exam, of course. He was like, well, he should be in his exam, but I've got the train to go and get this done. And he said, oh, he's ill. Can he redo the exam some other day? And he totally blagged it on his feet. It was absolutely marvellous.
Oh, that's kind of your dad to do that for you.
So I've got this and a C in English.
Then you wrote a book. So, you know, you wrote a book about music. So it all paid off in the end, didn't it?
But I will say, I saw them at the Astoria. So this is 1990. They played the Astoria on this tour, and it's heads and shoulders one of the best things I've ever seen.
They were meant to be playing in 2020. They were coming back, and they were coming to the UK to do a tour, and then obviously everything got cancelled because of COVID. But I think that they're due to come back in 22. So let's keep fingers crossed. Because I was thinking, it would be like, I don't like to get too nostalgic about music, because I want people to, like, I get frustrated sometimes when people get stuck in an era and then they're not prepared to try out new music. But I would be right at the front there, and it would, like, the energy, I think, of like my sore knees and, you know, aching back would disappear for an evening to be able to be at the front for that show.
Yeah, no, I would say, and I was surprised at how good they were at that Hyde Park gig. Anyhow, let's look forward. But actually, on that note, a record that people wouldn't think that you would dig.
Well, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but here we go. I mean, so here are some of the Lionel Richie records, but not only Lionel Richie. I've also got MC Hammer.
Oh, the Mega Mix.
It's the Mega Mix, yep. New Edition as well, and then probably an absolute favourite, Orville. So when Jenny and I used to share a house, we, like, bands would come back after a gig, and we'd have people like Nick and Justin, etc., all come back to our house, and then we had this like portable record player in the kitchen, and we'd have a kitchen disco, and like we'd have bands like Dalek, etc., staying over. And they were like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm listening to a New Edition with Justin Broderick in a kitchen in Birmingham. So that was always great fun. But I really love DJing. And so I used to DJ at ATP in places like that. And I'd love like playing something like In and Out of Grace, you know, like Mudhoney, and then dropping into New Edition or something like that. Or there's this record as well, which is called Player, and that's by I don't know if you know that one.
I don't know the record.
Amon Tobin, and it's Rain and Blood, Angel of Death, but it's a jungle remix.
Oh.
So it absolutely divides the audience, because if you're a hardcore Slayer fan, you're just going to think this is blasphemy.
Yeah.
But if you're like me and you're like, oh, this is magic, like 1 minute it's Slayer and then it goes into this amazing jungle sort of beats. So yeah.
I got a feeling I saw DJ Scotch Egg play that at Super Normal or someone like that, and yeah, that would explain what that was, because it always baffled me.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So I love it. I really love DJing, and I love sort of, I don't know, playing unexpected things one after the other. Like you sort of bring them in with like Mudhoney or Fugazi or something like that, and then bam, straight into New Edition or MC Hammer Megamix. But everyone loves it, because let's face it, like if you've been at a festival and the music's quite serious all afternoon or all evening, like there's nothing you want more than to kind of reach and grab when it comes to the evening, you know, and listen to a bit of Bonnie Tyler and sing your heart out. So
yeah, palate cleanser.
That might be what people wouldn't expect, and that, you know, that although Supersonic's probably got quite a serious people probably think that the music that I'm into is kind of quite serious experimental music. No, Lionel Richie, Orville, jungle. That's what I really love.
That's what you really love.
Yeah, like DJ Scud, Sound Murderer, like any of those really sort of hardcore sort of jungle records. Amazing.
Would you have any of those do Supersonic? Those sort of bands? Those like.
Well, we've had DJ Scud, and we've also had Panacea play previously at Supersonic, and then there's there's a band called PCM, a duo, who are a jungle, drum and bass jungle live act, and they've pretty much played every year, bar a couple, on the Friday night, and it's just awesome to see people that wouldn't normally dance, just can't help themselves to sort of move to a bit of jungle.
Yeah, I think they probably trust that it's correct because it's been curated. So it's like, this is allowed. Or whatever.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, aside from when like there are a few jungle artists, aren't there, that are a little bit on the homophobic side, and you know, you've got to move them to away. But yeah, some of the remixes and people like DJ Scud, etc.
Yeah, it's like you have to tiptoe now through it, or you can't have Burzum, you can't have that guy, you can't have.
To be honest, I've never been really into the black metal stuff, because to me it just seemed like really spoiled kids in Norway who had nothing better to do than to sort of rebel by, you know, being a bit fascist, because everywhere else it was, you know, they wanted to be anti-PC, and I just think, no, you're actual adults.
Yeah.
That's really childish. That's stupid. So yeah, I don't think there's any excuse for being a fascist, really. No, not cool.
I think I agree with you there.
We can all live without that music. It's fine.
Yeah.
Other great stuff.
So the last subject I have is favourite tendons. Before we get to that, one of the other times that we played with Circle.
Yeah.
And was that the Hare and Hounds?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to, because you have already mentioned them, and I was going to jump in then and sort of, but I think that they're kind of classic Supersonic type of band. To me, they seem like, here's one of my favourite Circle records. I absolutely love this album. I love that eye that's on the the actual record there. I think that's kind of cool. And this was put out on Aaron Turner's label.
All right, okay.
And also then the Pharaoh Overlord. You have to lump.
I've recently just bought that, and I haven't got around to listening to it yet. It is over there. Yeah. So
it's really good, and they're a really interesting band. So on that note, I think they're a very Supersonic-y band. Have you any thoughts on that band and their vibe?
Yeah, well, I think what's particularly interesting about them is in the really early days, like they used to do throat singing, and like their sound was so different. It sort of built and built and built, like that sort of motoric kind of sound, and just they sort of took you on that journey. And then of course they went for their sort of almost like glam rock phase.
Yeah.
And so I suppose with Circle, what's exciting about them is you never quite know what Circle you're going to get. And that unpredictability makes them interesting. I think almost like the band Boris, but with Boris, I always think good Boris, bad Boris. Like, will they be garage rock Boris, or will they be like, the massive gong Boris?
And which one's bad for you, massive gong or garage rock?
Which one do you think?
My guess would be that I don't know. I wouldn't like to say, because it's.
I'm less keen on the garage rock version. Right. I prefer the sort of slower, heavier, when they've got the gong and whatnot.
Yeah. Gong Boris, gotcha.
Yeah. But with Circle, I love all the moves and the costumes and the music, and like the first time we put them on, I think it was in 2006 at Supersonic, and it was with Zombie as well, and it was in what was the Medicine Bar at the Custom Factory. So that's probably about 150-200 capacity space, and everyone went, everyone that was in this really crowded, sweaty space went nuts for them, and it was magical. I think if you look on YouTube, there's footage of that. Right. Like everyone's sort of falling over themselves at the front of the gig. Sort of
we played with Pharaoh Overlord probably around 2008 or so at the Bradford 1 in 12.
Oh yeah.
And they did this thing. They seemed to play for about 2.5 hours. I've got to say, I'll say that for them. They played you got your value for money, if that's what your thing was. But they do this thing where the riff was very sort of simple, but it just altered slightly. So you were constantly into the idea of this one riff. But they were like climbing on top of each other. Like the bass guy, the sort of the man mountain bass guy was just in the middle. And it seemed like by the end, they were all just on top of him in some sort of...
There's such a sense of theatrics with how they play. Like they just, they give you a really good show. They put their heart into it, don't they? Yeah, you're never disappointed by a Circle show.
No, and what was funny was the time that you put them on and we played, you were like, oh, they're coming over from Finland for it. Can they use your gear or whatever? And I was like, yeah, cool, but like be prepared sort of thing. And so then we had to send them a list of all of our gear. And if anyone knows our band, like our backline is known as the pirate ship, because it's just like held together by like blue tack and spit. And it was like a Carlsborough combo and a knackered like trace head with a homemade bass cab. And I sent it all to them. I was like, this is what we got, like it, lump it sort of thing. They replied really quickly and it's like, absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. See you there.
That's what you want. You want people or bands that just appreciate other bands, and that's also the thing with Supersonic. Like I never want to book a band that is just about the fee, because we can't pay massive fees. Go and play, one of the other big, a big festival, but it should be that the people there are as interested in the other artists playing, and that they're appreciative of that. And that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, for me, the last time we were there, that Dan Higgs played. So, and Lungfish is one of my favourite ever bands, and I was like, holy shit! Like Dan Higgs is playing at this thing that we're at, and it was amazing.
And he, so Dan Higgs doesn't travel with a mobile phone, so you just have instructions to go and pick him up. Of course he doesn't. Exactly. You just have to go and pick him up from New Street Station and hope that he's going to be there. So I sent one of my friends who is a massive Lungfish fan, and she's actually got a tattoo of Dan Higgs' face on her leg. And I said, look, don't go that far. Don't show him your tattoo. That might scare him. But at least you'll know who he is if he's wandering around New Street Station. And she went and got him, and it was his birthday as well. So she had a balloon for him ready for his birthday. And then he, I was so excited about having him come and play, because I'm also a big Lungfish fan, and also Fountain Sun as well. And then like he asked if he could come back the following year, and I was like, of course we'll have you back. So yeah, it's lovely when someone, you know, that you're really into is into what you do as well.
Yeah. So regarding the fees that you pay, how much would LCD sound system be nowadays?
Oh my god, I I think probably more like they're probably about £20,000 or something like that, I imagine. And maybe, and really, because I don't work at that level, I just I couldn't even tell you. But yeah, I mean, they probably, yeah, ridiculous amounts of money these days.
Yeah.
Maybe even 100,000. I don't know.
Exactly. I can't predict once you get above, like, I don't know, circles level or whatever. I can't possibly predict fees. I'd love to have known what was in spiritualized envelope.
Oh, yeah. Well, how big a wad was it in the? How big an envelope?
Big enough. I needed a bag, not a pocket. But but yeah, like what is it? Portishead. I remember Portishead playing. What's that big festival in Barcelona?
Oh, Sonar or Primavera.
Yeah, exactly. One of those. I remember the talk of what they were getting paid to play it like 10 years back or whenever it was. And it would absolutely blew my mind. You know, it's a different level.
But also you have to think that European festivals are so much better funded than in the UK. I mean, we get some funding for Supersonic, but we still can't compete in any way, and you know, with European festivals. And that's why it's become so difficult these days. Like, there's no way we could have that lineup, that first lineup of Coil and LCD Sound System in the Bug.
Coil would definitely be tricky.
Well, that would, obviously, yeah. I mean, that would be a resurrection. That would be very hard. But you know, and then I look back and we had things like, you know, like High on Fire and and etc. And yeah, we probably couldn't even afford those types of bands anymore. It's in a different.
So you need to, yeah. So you have to totally have your finger on the pulse to catch the bands just on the way upwards who haven't quite reached.
Or I suppose it's about building a relationship, like with Neurosis in 2019. Like, we'd been in contact with each other for a really long time, trying to find a way to make it work, because, you know, they're not greedy in any way, but there's like, you know, there's eight or 10 people flying from the States, and then they've got to hire backline in Europe, and then they've got to have a bus, and then they've got to pay the merch person, and etc. Like, it costs them a lot of money to play. So you've got to find a way that it makes sense for them. And the way I've always tried to do it is to sort of strategically get other shows for those artists in either in other countries or in another city that's far enough away from Birmingham that it won't affect Supersonic, so that it's still worthwhile for the band. I don't want anyone to be losing money, but equally I can't be like that old business model of another festival we all were very fond of. You know, I just feel like that sort of, like, the fees were so over exploded that it wasn't realistic to, dare I say it, the marketplace, because there was.
Are you talking about the? Are you talking about the festival where the anagram is PAT?
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, I love that festival, and I enjoyed going to it so much, but I think, like, the business model in terms of like exclusively flying out a band and giving them a shed load of money when really they were never going to pull in regional shows ever more than like 150, 200 people. Just it overinflated the marketplace, and then it became unsustainable.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer to play slightly less, but know I can actually pay people.
Yeah.
And I think it's about being realistic in that sense.
Yeah, I was wondering. I wasn't sure whether to bring that up, but I was wondering whether a festival like that had somehow made it trickier for other festivals to go about their business. Because if this is probably awkward, but if yeah, so I was wondering if that was the case, whether it was become tricky because of it.
Yeah, well, I think on some ways at a point it was really great, because we got to do some collaborations together, and we did like their Nightmare Before Christmas in Birmingham, and sometimes when there were touring acts, we'd take those touring acts, and you know, we had a really close relationship for quite a long time. But then I think things just got a little bit silly in terms of like some of those inflated fees, and then it almost got competitive, which I think it's such a small scene, you can't be competitive. You've got to be allies. And so and then almost kind of be happy to carve your niche and sort of stay within that a little bit. Because if we're all putting on exactly the same acts, I know that's good for the artist perhaps, but then it doesn't become exciting for the audience or for the act if they're playing like 20 festivals that summer.
No, I agree. So did you book, how did it work with Neurosis then? That's a big band you had. So did you book dates for them, or did they go, okay, we're going to do a week in Europe? Supersonic?
Yeah, well, Steve Untitled was amazing, and Jodie Cox, who is their agent. I've known Jodie for a really long time, and we just worked together to try, and then they have a booking agent in mainland Europe, and so we booked a London show and the Supersonic, and that sort of covered the cost for the UK, and then they played a load of shows in Germany and the Netherlands, etc.
Right.
So we just worked together to make sure that all sort of fitted for them financially, but also that they were able to do it on their own terms.
Yeah, I saw an interview with him, the main guy, fairly recently, and I think he was saying that they don't tour as much as they used to, and they have jobs and all this sort of business. So
yeah, he's a school teacher, Steve Montail, like an amazing teacher, and there's a video of him with his students, and he's so dedicated to them. But they all live in different parts of the country now as well, and yeah, they've got jobs. So I guess, and that's the case for a lot of American bands, because if they've got jobs, like they only get like 2 weeks off a year or something like that. It's very hard for them to tour, so they've got to be quite strategic when they are going, of like what time of year and where are they going to play, and is it going to cover their costs.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so the final one I have here is favorite 10-inch record, and your thoughts on the 10-inch record.
I'm gutted that they cost so much money to make now, because we were going to put out some recordings this year, and some vinyl, and a 10-inch costs as much as a 12-inch these days. So I can't see many people putting them out, but you can't properly see because it's on the other side. But I've got a load of 10 inches up on that shelf. Yeah. But I've chosen Iron Monkey.
Oh yeah,
because they're one of the few bands that I went to see on my own. So when I was younger, I loved all this music, but I didn't have that many friends that were into the same music as me when I moved to Birmingham. Like I said, I slowly but surely met the guys from the Plastic Factory and Ideal, the skate shop, and then Martin Savage on my course as well. But there just weren't that many people into this strange music. And one of the few shows that I went to on my own, I went back to London. It must have been like an Easter holiday or a summer holiday, and like most of my friends in London hadn't really heard of this stuff either. I mean, they were into like the more traditional hardcore stuff like Burn and Gorilla Biscuits and that sort of thing, but I hadn't really. It wasn't on their radar yet. And they played at, I think it was called the Falcon up in Camden.
Yeah, there was a venue there called Falcon. Yeah,
exactly. And I went to that on my own, and it's crazy to think that I wouldn't have gone to shows on my own, and that I'd stopped myself going and experiencing stuff. But I was, and I still am. I'm a very shy person, and so things like that would have been very intimidating for me to go and do. But I loved them so much that I went to that show on my own, and then I went to see them like several times in Nottingham, and I think there was something about Iron Monkey in the same way as there is for like Drunken Hell or I Hate God or The Body. It's just, or Thou. There's something just so cathartic and like such physicality about the music. It just spoke to me. Perhaps I was an angry teenager and I still am, or perhaps I've been reincarnated as an angry young teenage boy. I don't know, but I love this sort of music. So that's why I've got the Iron Monkey record here.
Right, that's a great looking 10-inch as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and also what's best about it?
Look at that.
The artwork's by Frank Kovic. and also that it's marbly tie-dye.
Yeah, that's really nice, isn't it?
Imagine. And also their song titles were always really good as well.
Yeah. Sleep to Win sounds good. I'd have that.
Six pack and things like that.
No, I think you're right there. So sometimes you can't listen to it all the time, that sort of music, but just every now and then, it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have half an hour of this.
Well, I was watching on YouTube not that long ago, The Body with a female choir, and I was like, because we haven't been to gigs for like a year and a half now, like watching that, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I was watching it with my other half, and as soon as Chip's voice came in, he was like, what the hell is going on here? I'm going to leave you to this. I'm going upstairs. But whereas I was like, even though I was in my lounge sitting there completely sober, you know, on a Saturday evening, I was just like, couldn't help but have my sort of fingers in the air and just like sort of reliving that moment, because it's so weird not to be at a show.
Do you think actually that goes into the going to the gigs on your own thing then? I think sometimes it's good to not drag someone who's not into it with you to a gig. Like if you know, like Iron Monkey, if you're going to drag a mate along just for a night out, and him and her absolutely hate that sort of thing, and you're stuck with this person on your shoulder going, can we go? This is a nightmare. Can we go to the pub next door? And you're like, go away, please leave me alone.
But I think in a way that's probably why we started Capsule, because it's like, well, if I can't find the mates to go and see these bands with me, well, I'll put the bands on and then make other people come to the show and you know, and do it that way. Yeah, make it happen on your doorstep.
I started more as I got older liking going to gigs on my own for that reason, actually, just to sort of have my own thing and not have to explain why I like this nightmare music.
I've only been to 2 on my own, I think. Yeah, so Snuff I went to see on my own when I first came to university in Birmingham, because I couldn't find anyone that was into them, but I loved them. And then that Iron Monkey one in Camden on my own. But other than that, I've either put on the gig myself, so then forced other people to pay to come and join me, or harangued other people to go. And I think the nice thing is that particularly now, there are a lot more of my female friends that are as into this music as I am. And so like we went to Roadburn, I think it was in 2019, and it was like a gang of girls that all went. And you know, that wouldn't have been the case many years ago. So that was, and you know, we weren't there because of you know, our boyfriend or our partner. We weren't, you know, we were there in our own right because we all loved the music. It was quite funny actually, because we were watching The Body at one point, and they were playing with, I think it was with Dow, or it was Full of Hell, like the most tremendous set. And I looked down and there was a woman there who had been dragged by her boyfriend, and she was watching YouTube recipes on her iPhone with headphones in while like The Body were playing like the loudest set ever. Oh, bless you. Stay at home.
Well, yeah, exactly. Go to a gig, go to another gig on your own, a different one. What do you like? Do you have anything else you want to show or talk about?
Well, I suppose I just thought a couple of records that I bought recently that are worth recommending. Yes. So this one is Gazelle Twin with the Next Choir, NYX Choir, which is tremendous. Well worth having a listen to. And then if you've not heard of Divide and Dissolve, they just come out on Invader Records, and again, they're from Australia, absolutely tremendous. 2 women playing like super heavy music, but very original in that, and it's almost sort of filmic in terms of, yeah, because it's instrumental as opposed to having a lyric. So I definitely recommend that.
Heard a lot of people talk about that band. Yeah.
I also, this band, I think they're called Regana and Thou. That's a fantastic record, and that does remind me of my young. It's a new band, but it does remind me of my young self in terms of it's heart wrenching music. Again, two women playing absolutely screaming, sort of hardcore, but not not New York hardcore, sort of almost like emo-y sort of heart wrenching. Cool. Definitely worth a listen. And then I suppose I wanted to play tribute to Tom from Tomega with Valentina, because sadly he passed away this year, and I think that's a huge loss to the experimental music world, or the independent music world, whatever we want to call it, DIY, because he was a tremendous human being. We worked with him a lot. He was an agent as well as a performer, and he helped us to get people like Dan Higgs to come and play at Supersonic, sort of sorted out all of his logistics for him. But then equally, like with Tomega, they would always bring really interesting projects to the table. And I've always thought with Supersonic, like quite often people think that you should only work with an artist once and then, then you're onto the next big thing. But I like to be able to build relationships with artists, because I think that they're ever evolving. Yeah. And so you want to continue to support them so that they come back with something, propose something, like a collaboration, or that their music's moved in a new direction, and that you want to support that. And I think Tomega always did that in an amazing way. And I really feel for Valentina now, because they had such a strong bond, but she's amazing in her own right as well. So yeah, a little tribute to Tom, and this is a great record to go and
I agree with everything. Yeah, great loss. Thank you very much for this great chat.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me, because like digging out those old tapes and remembering that I used to go and steal the covers from our price, that really gave, it tickled me to think about that 30 years ago or something. So it's great fun.
Absolutely disgraceful behaviour.
To be fair, I buy my records now, so I do support artists now. I pay them, I feed them, and I buy their music, so I don't feel so bad. And to be fair, I'm sure, ending on this, I'm sure that The Cure, it would have been all right that they didn't get the money for that, and probably Jane's Addiction have done all right over the years as well. I don't think I was taking money from those big bands, so it's all right.
I think they're just about managed, aren't they?
Yeah, I hope so.
So we're going to wave goodbye, and I'm going to press stop. Okay, we can carry on talking afterwards if you want, but we're going to wave goodbye. So thank you very much, Lisa.
The awkward long wave.
The long wave. I like it. It's like a game show.
Yeah.
Okay.